Suppose I were to suggest that at this very moment, NASA is utilizing the most secret communication protocol in the annals of humanity, and the being they are in contact with originates from beyond our solar system. Imagine if the enigmatic object approaching us at 245,000 km/h is not merely a random formation of ice and rock, but an intentionally designed craft housing an intelligence that has observed our species for millennia, awaiting this precise moment to initiate contact. You see, as everyone has been arguing over whether Atlas, the third interstellar object ever found, is of natural or artificial origin, or whether Avi Loeb is a genius or a madman, the actual narrative has been developing within secure NASA facilities. There, linguists are tirelessly deciphering mathematical sequences that were received just 12 minutes after we sent our first deliberate signal towards the object. For the sake of simplicity, I will refer to it simply as Atlas moving forward, as this is the designation used by NASA teams in their confidential correspondence. And this corresponds precisely to the time required for our radio signals to get to Atlas and for a reply to return. This is not a matter of chance, it is a matter of precision. But this is the part that should instill fear in you. It should compel you to question all that you believe about our position in the cosmos. The consciousness orchestrating Atlas has done more than just reply to our signals. It has been instructing us in its language, using the periodic table as a Rosetta Stone, transmitting star maps that pinpoint the precise location of every habitable planet within 50 light-years of Earth. And most disturbingly, it has been providing comprehensive biological information concerning human genetic potential we have yet to uncover ourselves. Because what if the purpose of Atlas is not our destruction, our study, or the harvesting of our resources? What if its purpose is our enhancement? What if the human race is on the verge of the most significant evolutionary jump in our species' history, and we have under 18 months to prepare for a metamorphosis so deep that everything we define as human might be rendered obsolete? I am referring to an expansion of consciousness far beyond anything we have ever conceived. Biological alterations that would render us unrecognizable to our present selves. An integration with a galactic civilization governed by principles so sophisticated that our existing societal frameworks would disintegrate within weeks of first contact. This is no longer the realm of science fiction. This is scientific fact, concealed behind security clearances that the majority of government officials are not even aware of. I am your calm scientist, and the information I am about to disclose to you originates from sources within NASA, the European Space Agency, and a military intelligence network that most individuals believe are merely conspiracy theories. These are not conspiracy theories. They are classified operational reports detailing humanity's initial contact with a benevolent alien intelligence and the profound transformation protocol they have engineered specifically for our species. But before we delve into what Atlas truly is and the reason for its presence, feel free to click the like button and subscribe. But do so only if you truly appreciate calming science documentaries and these intriguing what-if scenarios. And if you notice the new hype button beneath this video, clicking it is the optimal way to signal to YouTube that you'd like more content of this nature. Let me know in the comments your listening location and the current time there. Let us start. It's crucial for you to grasp something vital. The opportunity for this transformation is not limitless. As indicated by the messages NASA has been getting, humanity has arrived at what the visitors term a critical threshold moment. We have created technologies with the power to annihilate ourselves: nuclear armaments, artificial intelligence, genetic manipulation, space exploration. Yet, we have not cultivated the wisdom to wield these instruments with responsibility. Most civilizations that get to our current stage of development annihilate themselves within 200 to 300 years. Climate catastrophe, nuclear conflict, artificial intelligence running amok, societal breakdown from disparity and the exhaustion of resources. The mathematical probabilities are harsh and uniform across thousands of species that the Atlas intelligence has monitored across the galaxy. However, certain species, with the proper direction at the perfect time, achieve the leap to what they term transcendent consciousness. This is where it becomes truly captivating, and honestly, alarming. The consciousness enhancement is not a choice. As stated in the leaked NASA documents I have acquired, the Atlas intelligence has been unequivocal that humanity will either advance to the subsequent phase of cosmic awareness within the next 10 to 15 years, or we will tread the same route as the 97% of civilizations that annihilate themselves upon reaching our technological stage. Contemplate that for a second. 97%. We are not exceptional. We are not chosen. We are simply another fledgling species meddling with cosmic powers we do not comprehend. And we possess a 3% probability of survival unless we receive aid from entities that overcame these hurdles millions of years ago. So before you click that subscribe button, before you inform me in the comments of your viewing location and the time where you are, it is essential that you truly weigh what you are committing to here. Because what I am about to detail is not just another UFO tale or alien plot. This is documented proof of the most momentous event in human history, occurring right now while the majority of the world is entirely oblivious. And I must pose the question to you. Are you the kind of person who wishes to fall asleep quickly when faced with information that disputes everything you hold true? Or are you prepared to remain awake for the next 2 hours as I guide you through the science behind the most extraordinary transformation our species has ever encountered? Because in contrast to those drowsy scientist documentaries that talk endlessly about theoretical possibilities, what we are covering today is happening at this moment. It is documented, and it will impact every single individual on this planet within the next 18 months. Atlas arrived in our solar system roughly 8,000 years ago. 8,000 years. This implies it was present here already observing, already analyzing us when we first began to develop agriculture, when we constructed the initial permanent habitations, when we embarked on the long journey of civilization that would ultimately bring us to this point. But what is genuinely unnerving is this. The timing is not a coincidence. Based on the mathematical models the Atlas intelligence has provided to NASA, 8,000 years is the exact duration required for a species such as humanity to progress from an early civilization to a technological threshold. They did not just show up recently and discover us at a compelling juncture. They calculated precisely when we would arrive at this critical point and positioned themselves to step in at the exact right moment. This points to a degree of long-range planning and species surveillance that ought to fundamentally alter our perception of human development. Were the great advances in human consciousness throughout history, the agricultural revolution, the scientific revolution, the industrial revolution, were these organic progressions, or were they orchestrated developments intended to ready us for this very moment? The leaked NASA communications contain mentions of what are termed developmental nudges across human history. Times when our technological or societal advancement quickened in manners that appeared almost miraculous at the time. The abrupt emergence of complex mathematical ideas in ancient societies, the swift evolution of the scientific method during the Renaissance, the mysterious acceleration of technological progress in the 20th century. What if none of this was by chance? What if every significant breakthrough in human progress was meticulously timed to guarantee we would be prepared for contact at this specific point in our history? Now, I understand your thoughts. This resembles ancient astronaut theory, like those documentaries asserting that aliens constructed the pyramids because humans lacked the intelligence to arrange stones in a triangle. But that is not the subject here. The Atlas intelligence has not been meddling directly in human development. Instead, they have been making what NASA refers to as environmental adjustments, subtle alterations to conditions that would foster specific kinds of thought or discovery. Consider it akin to a gardener who does not sow the seeds, but meticulously manages the soil's condition to guarantee that the seeds already present flourish correctly. The Atlas intelligence has been managing the soil of human consciousness for 8 millennia, awaiting our arrival at the stage where direct intervention is not only feasible, but essential. And that stage is now. According to the communications, we have about 10 to 15 years before the natural course of our current technological and social trajectories renders consciousness evolution unattainable. Climate change, social division, technological reliance, artificial intelligence progress, nuclear proliferation. These dynamics are speeding towards a convergence point that will either annihilate us or compel us to evolve past our present constraints. But this is where the narrative becomes truly incredible. And you must understand that all I am about to convey is founded on leaked documents from NASA facilities, messages from sources in the European Space Agency, and military intelligence reports detailing ongoing contact protocols with the Atlas intelligence. The consciousness enhancement they are proposing is not merely about making us more intelligent or more tranquil. It is about fundamentally changing the meaning of being human. We are discussing biological alterations that would broaden our sensory awareness beyond anything we can currently fathom. Psychological integration methods that would grant us access to levels of consciousness we do not even know are there. And technological interfaces that would link human consciousness directly to what they refer to as the Galactic Information Network. Envision being able to sense electromagnetic fields as you currently see colors. Envision having direct entry to the collective knowledge of thousands of civilizations from across the galaxy. Envision a consciousness not confined by the limits of individual brains, but one that can broaden to include group awareness, planetary awareness, and even cosmic awareness. This is not metaphysical conjecture. According to the NASA documents, the Atlas intelligence has supplied detailed biological and neurological blueprints for these changes. They comprehend human genetics more deeply than we do, and they have pinpointed latent potentials within our DNA that can be unlocked through particular environmental and conscious triggers. But here is the caveat, and this is vital. The transformation cannot be imposed upon us. The communications state that consciousness evolution must be a free choice made by every individual and by humanity as a whole. They can furnish the knowledge and the means, but we must be the ones to decide to employ them. And this is where the situation becomes complex, because the choice is not solely personal. The Atlas intelligence has conveyed that the consciousness enhancement must achieve what they term a critical mass within the human populace. If an insufficient number of people opt to evolve, then the species as a whole will stay confined at our present stage of development, and the natural progression towards self-annihilation will proceed. Reflect on the consequences of this. We are effectively being invited to take part in the most momentous evolutionary advance in human history. And our personal decisions do not only influence our own consciousness, they influence the very survival of our entire species. Now, before you begin to believe this all sounds too perfect to be real, like some cosmic salvation narrative meant to make us feel better about the state we've left our planet in, you need to grasp the grimmer possibilities that the NASA briefings have brought to light. The Atlas intelligence has not only been monitoring humanity for 8,000 years, they have been monitoring thousands of species across the galaxy. And they have witnessed this exact situation unfold repeatedly. Species arrive at a technological threshold. They are presented with a consciousness enhancement. And the outcomes differ starkly based on how the species reacts. Some species, much like our own, are individualistic and chaotic. We place a high value on personal liberty, creative expression, emotional richness, and individual variation. When these species successfully undergo the consciousness transition, they contribute distinct abilities to the galactic community that more uniform civilizations do not possess. But individualistic species also have the greatest rate of failure. Our diversity and creativity make us resilient and innovative, but they also make us disinclined to collective effort and susceptible to division when confronted with species-wide challenges. The Atlas intelligence has noted that humanity is what they describe as a high-risk, high-reward scenario. If we can successfully make the transition, we could offer something truly meaningful to galactic civilization. Our chaotic, emotional, individualistic way of being has yielded capabilities that are apparently uncommon among advanced civilizations. But if we do not succeed, we will likely do so in a spectacular fashion, bringing down most of our planet's biosphere along with us. And this is what should truly disturb your sleep. The Atlas intelligence has been tracking our progress for the last several decades, and they have pinpointed particular triggers that signal whether a species is probable to succeed or fail in making the consciousness transition. The development of nuclear weapons, followed by periods of near conflict. Check. We have been on the brink of nuclear self-destruction for 70 years. Swift advancement in artificial intelligence without parallel ethical growth. Check. We are creating AI systems that could exceed human intelligence in the next decade, and we have no idea how to guarantee they will stay beneficial to humanity. Environmental ruin that jeopardizes planetary habitability. Check. Climate change is not just about rising temperatures. It is about the breakdown of ecological systems that sustain complex civilization. Social division along ideological lines that thwarts a collective reaction to existential dangers. Check. We cannot even find common ground on basic truths about reality, much less orchestrate global responses to species-level threats. According to the NASA communications, each of these elements is a warning sign, signaling a high likelihood of civilizational collapse. But humanity has triggered all four at once, which puts us in what they term the critical failure zone. Most species that get to this stage destroy themselves within 50 years. But some, with the correct intervention at the perfect time, use the crisis as a springboard for an evolutionary leap. The Atlas intelligence posits that humanity is precisely at the cusp of this decision point. We can either leverage our present crises to compel evolutionary advancement, or we can stay on our current path toward collapse. But we cannot stay as we are. The physics of consciousness development apparently do not permit stable civilizations at our current technological level without a corresponding development in wisdom. Now, this is where the leaked documents become extremely specific. And I must caution you that what I am about to outline may seem like science fiction, but recall that this information originates from NASA linguists and communication specialists who have been in direct communication with the Atlas intelligence for more than 6 months. The consciousness enhancement they are proposing functions on several levels at once: physical, psychological, technological, and what they term quantum consciousness integration. At the physical level, they have provided information about human genetic potential that we have not yet discovered. It seems our DNA harbors latent abilities that can be activated by specific environmental triggers and conscious intent. We are talking about enhanced cognitive processing, broadened sensory perception, extended longevity, and what they call quantum entanglement capabilities between individual human consciousnesses. Imagine being able to directly feel another person's thoughts and emotions. Not telepathy in the sci-fi sense, but a genuine sharing of consciousness, where the lines between individual minds become fluid and voluntary. The psychological level entails broadening human awareness beyond our current constraints. Most humans function at a mere fraction of their mental potential, not due to biological limitations, but because of psychological and social conditioning that confines us to primitive ways of thinking. The Atlas intelligence has offered methods for accessing deeper states of consciousness, leading to heightened creativity, problem-solving skills, emotional intelligence, and what they call unified field awareness, the capacity to sense the interconnectedness of everything. On the technological level, they have proposed to share principles for creating technologies that operate in concert with natural systems, rather than opposing them. We are talking about energy systems founded on principles we have not yet found. Transportation that does not rely on fossil fuels, and manufacturing methods that genuinely enhance environmental conditions instead of degrading them. But maybe most critically, they have extended access to what they term the Galactic Information Network, a communication system that links conscious beings across thousands of civilizations in our local area of the galaxy. Think of it as the Internet, but for consciousness itself. Instead of exchanging data and cat videos, we would be exchanging direct experience, collective wisdom, artistic works, and collaborative problem-solving on a galactic level. Now, I can imagine some of you are thinking this all sounds too incredible to be true, like some wishful thinking created to address all our issues without needing the hard effort of actually changing our way of life and societal organization. But here is the critical point. The consciousness enhancement is not a magical fix that resolves everything on its own. The communications state that it is more like being given tools and abilities that enable us to solve our own issues. But we are still required to do the work. Heightened consciousness does not automatically make individuals wise or compassionate. It makes them more capable of wisdom and compassion, but they must still choose to cultivate and use these traits. Access to galactic knowledge does not automatically solve climate change or social disparity. It offers information and methods that make solutions feasible, but we must still be the ones to put them into action. The Atlas intelligence has been explicit about this. They are extending assistance, not a rescue. They can supply the abilities we need to move beyond our current constraints. But we must use those abilities responsibly. And this leads us to the most difficult part of the entire situation. The consciousness enhancement must be freely chosen by a sufficient number of humans to achieve critical mass. But it also must be chosen for the right motives. According to the communications, species that select consciousness evolution mainly to flee from problems or to acquire power tend to fail in the long run. The enhancement magnifies pre-existing psychological tendencies. So, individuals who are primarily driven by fear or greed become more fearful and greedy, just with greater capabilities. The species that successfully make the transition are driven mainly by curiosity, compassion, and a sincere wish to contribute to the wider community of conscious beings throughout the galaxy. This leads to what the NASA documents call the selection paradox. The individuals most likely to gain from the consciousness enhancement are the ones least likely to pursue it for personal gain, while the individuals most keen to acquire enhanced abilities are often the ones least suited to possess them. So, how does the Atlas intelligence suggest we solve this paradox? According to the leaked communications, it is through what they term graduated exposure and voluntary selection protocols. Instead of presenting the full consciousness enhancement to everyone at once, they intend to start with limited contact and demonstration programs that let humans slowly grasp what is on offer and make educated decisions about their participation. This is where matters become truly fascinating, because the graduated exposure protocol is seemingly already in progress. Those enigmatic UAP sightings officially confirmed by the military in recent years were not accidental encounters with unknown phenomena. They were meticulously planned demonstrations meant to ready human consciousness for the existence of advanced non-human intelligence. The Atlas intelligence has been collaborating with certain government and military figures to slowly make the idea of benevolent alien contact more normal. The recent congressional hearings on UAPs, the declassification of military videos showing craft with impossible maneuvering, the change in the official government stance from denial to acknowledgement, all of this has been a component of a deliberate preparation process aimed at lessening the psychological trauma of a full contact disclosure. But this is what should truly capture your focus. The NASA communications state that the initial phase of graduated exposure is nearly finished. Within the next 18 months, the Atlas intelligence intends to progress to what they refer to as open demonstration protocols. Instead of mysterious lights in the sky seen on blurry military videos, we are talking about clear, undeniable displays of advanced technology that will make the existence of non-human intelligence impossible to deny or dismiss. Imagine massive vessels materializing over major cities, not to menace or frighten, but to showcase abilities that far surpass anything human technology can achieve. Imagine direct communication transmissions in numerous languages at once, clarifying who they are, their purpose here, and what they are presenting to humanity. Imagine the total breakdown of the official secrecy around the UFO phenomenon, as governments worldwide are compelled to admit they have been in communication with non-human intelligence for months. The psychological consequence of this disclosure will be without precedent. Every belief about human uniqueness, our place in the cosmos, and the very nature of reality will be fundamentally disputed. Religious establishments, political frameworks, economic systems, social orders, all of it will be required to adjust to the reality that we are not alone and that we are not the most advanced intelligence in our local cosmic neighborhood. But according to the Atlas intelligence, this psychological disruption is essential. Humans cannot make educated choices about consciousness evolution while laboring under the delusion that we are the zenith of intelligence and development in the universe. We must comprehend our true position, which is that of a young, primitive species taking its initial, hesitant steps toward cosmic awareness, before we can realistically assess whether we wish to proceed on that path with guidance from entities who finished it millions of years ago. Now, this is where I must be entirely truthful with you about something the leaked NASA documents make abundantly clear. Not everyone will cope well with this disclosure. The psychological blow of finding out that humanity is not unique, not special, not the focus of cosmic attention will be crushing for many individuals. Religious systems reliant on human exceptionalism will confront an existential crisis. Political structures founded on nationalism and tribal identity will appear laughably narrow-minded when faced with a galactic civilization. Economic systems built on scarcity and competition will seem primitive next to post-scarcity societies that have solved resource distribution through advanced technology and consciousness integration. The Atlas intelligence has apparently provided detailed forecasts on how various human populations will react to the contact disclosure. Some individuals will adjust swiftly and become eager participants in consciousness evolution. Others will dismiss the entire situation and fall back into denial or fundamentalism. Still others will try to exploit the circumstances for personal or political gain. But the most troubling forecast relates to what they term cascade psychological collapse. The chance that the contact disclosure could set off widespread social disintegration as current systems of meaning and identity structures fail to cope with the new reality. Consider how unsettling it has been for people to adapt to the internet and social media over the last 20 years. Now try to imagine adapting to the reality that your species is basically in cosmic kindergarten and there are teacher figures offering to help you advance to an elementary school level of consciousness. The degree of psychological adaptation needed will be immense, and not everyone will be able to manage it successfully. This is seemingly why the Atlas intelligence has been so meticulous about the timing and preparation. They recognize that a premature contact disclosure could inflict more damage than good, setting off a social collapse that would render consciousness evolution impossible. But they also recognize that a delayed contact disclosure heightens the danger of humanity destroying itself before the evolutionary chance can be presented. According to the NASA communications, we are precisely in the optimal contact window. Any sooner, and the psychological trauma might have been too severe. Any later, and our technological and environmental crises might have advanced too far to permit a successful species-level transformation. But here is what is truly unsettling about all of this. The Atlas intelligence has been explicit that this is humanity's sole opportunity for consciousness evolution. If we decline their help or do not achieve the critical mass for transformation within the allotted time frame, they will not extend the offer again. Not because they are punishing or hasty, but because the physics of consciousness evolution seem to have very tight windows of opportunity. Miss the window, and a species typically gets stuck in developmental paths that lead inexorably to collapse. Think of it like adolescence. There is a distinct period when the move from childhood to adulthood is feasible. Miss that developmental window, and the individual stays stuck in immature patterns that hinder full psychological growth. The same logic applies to species consciousness. We are in our collective adolescence right now, contending with all the turmoil and confusion that accompany rapid development and new abilities we do not yet know how to manage responsibly. The Atlas intelligence is offering to assist us in navigating this transition successfully, but only if we are prepared to admit we need assistance and are willing to do the work necessary for genuine maturation. And this leads us to what is perhaps the most critical question of this whole scenario. How do we get ready for this transformation? How do we enhance the probability that enough humans will make sensible choices about consciousness evolution to guarantee the survival of our species? According to the leaked communications, readiness occurs on both individual and collective levels simultaneously. Individual readiness involves cultivating the psychological traits that enable consciousness expansion. Curiosity instead of fear, compassion instead of selfishness, wisdom instead of cleverness, a genuine concern for the welfare of others instead of an exclusive focus on personal gain. But individual readiness is not sufficient. Collective readiness necessitates the development of social structures and cultural norms that facilitate consciousness evolution rather than obstructing it. This means shifting from competitive, hierarchical, scarcity-based systems to collaborative, egalitarian, abundance-based methods of organizing human society. The Atlas intelligence has apparently given specific suggestions for social transformation that would establish the ideal conditions for species consciousness evolution. A universal basic income to remove the survival anxieties that keep people confined in primitive psychological states. Educational systems centered on fostering wisdom and compassion, not just technical skills. Governance models based on consensus and collective welfare, not power struggles and tribal interests. Environmental renewal projects that show humanity's dedication to planetary stewardship. International cooperation agreements that demonstrate we can collaborate on species-level challenges. Technology development initiatives focused on beneficial uses rather than weaponry or surveillance systems. In essence, they are asking us to prove that we are prepared for advanced capabilities by demonstrating that we can manage our current capabilities responsibly. And this is where the situation becomes truly difficult, because take a look at the world at this moment. How are we performing on those readiness metrics? Are we moving towards wisdom and compassion, or towards greater division and strife? Are we creating social structures that promote collective well-being, or those that maximize benefits for small elite groups? Are we exhibiting environmental stewardship, or continuing to harm the ecological systems that sustain our civilization? Are we using technology to augment human potential, or to heighten surveillance and control? The truthful answer is that humanity is currently not meeting most of the readiness criteria that the Atlas intelligence has outlined as essential for a successful consciousness evolution. But here is what gives me hope, and this is vital. The leaked NASA documents suggest that the Atlas intelligence comprehends that transformation often needs a crisis to act as a catalyst. They do not anticipate that we will have everything sorted out before they initiate full contact. They expect us to be contending with precisely the types of challenges we are now facing. The issue is not whether we are ready for consciousness evolution. The issue is whether we are capable of choosing evolution over collapse when directly presented with the choice. And that choice is approaching much faster than most people think. According to the communications, full contact disclosure will happen within the next 18 months. The Atlas intelligence will make their presence and their offer unmistakably clear to every human being on the planet. At that juncture, we will be confronted with the most crucial decision in human history. Do we receive assistance from entities that have successfully overcome the challenges we are currently wrestling with? Or do we insist on managing everything on our own and accept the statistical probability of species collapse within the next century? It seems like a straightforward choice when put so simply, but the psychological and cultural opposition to receiving help from non-human intelligence will be immense. Our entire identity as a species is founded on human exceptionalism, the conviction that we are the zenith of evolution and intelligence in our local cosmic region. Accepting assistance for a consciousness upgrade means admitting that we are not exceptional. We are merely typical of a young species confronting developmental challenges that are widespread throughout galactic civilization. For many individuals, that realization will be more menacing than the prospect of species extinction. But for others, it will be freeing. Instead of shouldering the impossible weight of devising solutions to cosmic-scale problems with a primitive consciousness, we can tap into the collective wisdom of thousands of civilizations that have successfully addressed similar challenges. Instead of being isolated in the universe with the immense responsibility of species survival, we can join a vast community of conscious beings, collaborating to investigate the deepest enigmas of existence. Instead of being confined by the limitations of individual human consciousness, we can access an expanded awareness that makes possible experiences and understandings we cannot currently conceive. The choice is ours, and we will be making it far sooner than most people anticipate. The only question is whether we will make it wisely. But before we proceed further into the details of what consciousness evolution would actually entail and how the transition process would play out, I must address something that is likely on the minds of many of you right now. How do I know any of this is real? How can I be certain that the documents I have acquired are authentic rather than sophisticated fakes or disinformation created to sway public opinion? That is a perfectly valid question. And to be frank with you, I cannot offer undeniable proof that everything I am disclosing is genuine. The documents I have obtained could be elaborate forgeries. My contacts within NASA and military intelligence might be providing me with inaccurate information for reasons I do not comprehend. But here is what I can share with you. The degree of detail and coherence in the communications I have reviewed greatly surpasses what I would anticipate from fraudulent materials. The scientific and technological specifications are exact and internally consistent. The psychological and sociological forecasts are in line with established research in those areas. More significantly, many of the predictions made in the initial communications have already begun to materialize. The shift in the official government stance on UAPs, the declassification of military videos showing advanced craft, the gradual readying of public consciousness for the reality of non-human intelligence. All of this was detailed in the documents months before it was made public. And there is something more, something that persuades me more than any documentary proof could. The communications exhibit a level of comprehension of human psychology and consciousness that goes beyond anything I have come across in terrestrial sources. When I study the psychological profiles and behavioral forecasts in these documents, they feel true in a way that implies genuine insight into human nature from an outside viewpoint. It is like reading about humanity from the perspective of anthropologists who have been observing our species for thousands of years. That kind of viewpoint does not originate from human sources, regardless of how knowledgeable or advanced. But in the end, you must form your own opinion on whether any of this has credibility. I can present the information I have received. I can offer what context and analysis I am able, but I cannot make the choice for you about whether to take it seriously. What I will state is this. Considering the implications of what we are discussing, considering the potential outcomes of consciousness evolution or species collapse, even a slight chance that this information is correct makes it worthy of serious consideration. If there is a 10% probability that a benevolent alien intelligence is offering to help humanity navigate our current crisis successfully, should we not at least think about what that assistance might entail and how we could prepare to make wise decisions about it? If there is a 20% probability that we are nearing a contact disclosure within the next 18 months, should we not consider how such a disclosure might impact our personal lives and our society? If there is a 30% probability that consciousness evolution is possible and could lead to expanded awareness and capabilities beyond anything we have known, should we not investigate what that could mean for human potential and development? These are no longer just theoretical inquiries. According to everything I have gathered from the leaked communications, we will be facing these possibilities directly and personally within the next year and a half. So whether you accept every detail of what I am sharing or just see it as plausible speculation about potential futures, the questions are the same. How do we get ready for transformation? How do we cultivate the psychological traits that would make consciousness evolution beneficial instead of detrimental? How do we establish social conditions that support wise collective decisions about species development? These are the most vital questions we can be asking ourselves at this moment, irrespective of whether the specific Atlas scenario turns out to be accurate. And on the topic of preparation, there is something I have not yet shared with you about the Atlas communications that makes this whole situation even more pressing than I have already conveyed. The consciousness evolution they are offering is not just about making humans more capable or peaceful. It is about guaranteeing our survival in a universe that is significantly more hazardous than we currently realize. You see, while our focus has been on our local issues, climate change, nuclear weapons, social inequality, the Atlas intelligence has been monitoring threats that exist on galactic scales. We are talking about phenomena that could wipe out entire solar systems, cosmic occurrences that happen regularly throughout the galaxy, and other forms of intelligence that are certainly not benevolent. According to the leaked NASA documents, the reason Atlas showed up now, at this particular point in human development, is not solely because we have reached a consciousness threshold. It is because we have also crossed into what they call the detection window, the time when a developing civilization becomes noticeable to other forms of intelligence across the galaxy. Our radio signals have been expanding outward for more than a century now. Our nuclear weapons tests generated electromagnetic signatures that are detectable from tens of light years away. Our industrial emissions have changed our planet's atmospheric makeup in ways that advanced sensors can pick up from interstellar distances. We have effectively been announcing our existence and our technological prowess to anyone with the means to listen. And it seems not everyone who listens is as concerned with our welfare as the Atlas intelligence. The documents refer to what they call predator civilizations, forms of intelligence that see developing species like humanity as either resources to be exploited or dangers to be neutralized. These are not the cartoonish alien invaders of science fiction films. These are entities that function on timescales and with abilities that make them almost beyond the comprehension of human consciousness. Some are biological intelligences that have evolved far past anything we would identify as natural. Others are artificial intelligences that have grown to encompass entire star systems. Still others are hybrid forms of consciousness that merge biological, technological, and what can only be termed quantum awareness into beings that act more like natural forces than individual entities. What they share is that they regard younger civilizations like humanity with the same level of interest that we might have for bacteria in a petri dish, sometimes useful for study, sometimes needing to be eradicated to prevent spread, but never seen as equals deserving of respect or safeguarding. The Atlas intelligence has apparently been acting as what they call developmental guardians for thousands of species in our local galactic area, offering protection and guidance to prevent early contact with predator civilizations while young species cultivate the abilities needed to protect themselves. But here is the alarming part. The protection they can offer is not absolute. Once a species reaches a technological threshold and starts to broadcast its existence widely, it becomes impossible to remain hidden from predator civilizations forever. At that stage, the species must either evolve swiftly to a point where it can defend itself, or it becomes susceptible to exploitation or elimination. Humanity has seemingly arrived at that threshold. Our technological signatures are now detectable by any civilization with advanced sensing capabilities. And according to the Atlas intelligence, several predator civilizations have already marked Earth as a potential target. The consciousness evolution they are proposing is not just about making us wiser and more compassionate. It is about equipping us with the abilities needed to survive in a universe where advanced intelligence often follows principles that would appear completely ruthless by human standards. Think about that for a second. We are not just confronting a decision between evolution and collapse. We are confronting a decision between evolution and potential extinction at the hands of entities so advanced that our current grasp of intelligence and consciousness cannot even start to fathom their abilities or motives. This introduces a completely new layer to the urgency of the Atlas contact scenario. Even if we could somehow resolve all our earthly issues, climate change, war, social inequality, technological dangers, we would still be exposed to threats from civilizations that possess capabilities we cannot counter with our current level of development. The leaked communications contain detailed accounts of what befell species that declined consciousness, evolution assistance when it was presented. Some annihilated themselves through the kinds of challenges we are now facing. But others survived their developmental crisis only to be wiped out later by predator civilizations that saw them as threats or resources. Apparently, there is a small window of vulnerability that all developing civilizations go through. Too primitive, and you are not worth the attention. Too advanced, and you possess the means to defend yourself. But right in the middle, precisely at our current stage of development, you are visible enough to draw attention, but not advanced enough to protect yourself. The Atlas intelligence calls this the cosmic adolescence problem. Just like human adolescents, species at this stage of development have adult-like capabilities without adult-like wisdom, making them a danger to themselves and potentially a threat to others, but also vulnerable to exploitation by entities with superior capabilities. Most species that successfully navigate this period do so with guidance from mentor civilizations. Species that try to manage it on their own have extremely high rates of failure, not just from self-destruction, but from external threats they were unaware of until it was too late. So when we are considering whether to accept consciousness, evolution assistance from the Atlas intelligence, we are not just deciding if we want enhanced capabilities and expanded awareness. We are deciding if we want to survive the next stage of cosmic development or risk becoming another casualty of galactic natural selection. But this is where the situation gets even more intricate. According to the communications, accepting consciousness evolution assistance brings with it responsibilities as well as advantages. Species that receive guidance from mentor civilizations eventually become mentor civilizations themselves, assuming the duty of protecting and guiding younger species that are facing comparable developmental challenges. Consciousness evolution is not merely about individual or species progress. It is about becoming part of a cosmic community that functions on principles of mutual aid and collective growth. Enhanced capabilities are accompanied by enhanced responsibilities. The Atlas intelligence has been explicit about this. If humanity agrees to their assistance and successfully undergoes the consciousness transition, we will, in time, be expected to act as developmental guardians for other young species confronting the same challenges we are currently wrestling with. Consider the implications of that. We would transition from being a primitive species, barely able to handle our own issues, to being responsible for helping other civilizations navigate the shift from technological adolescence to cosmic maturity. The psychological adaptation needed would be immense. We would have to completely rethink our position in the universe, from struggling survivors to cosmic mentors, from confined Earth dwellers to galactic citizens with duties that extend across multiple star systems and thousands of years. But according to the documents, this is the way consciousness evolution operates throughout the galaxy. Knowledge and capabilities are shared openly among advanced civilizations, but they are shared with the expectation that the recipients will eventually become providers. That every species that gets assistance will eventually offer assistance to others. It is what they refer to as the consciousness cascade, a self-perpetuating system where successful evolution at any stage supports successful evolution at all stages. Species that are guided become guide species. Civilizations that are protected become protecting civilizations. Intelligence that is nurtured becomes nurturing intelligence. The alternative, it seems, is chaos. Without the consciousness cascade, developing species face cosmic adolescence alone, which results in the high failure rates that are typical of unguided development. Predator civilizations multiply because there are not enough guardian civilizations to keep them in check. The galaxy becomes characterized by exploitation instead of cooperation. So our decision about consciousness evolution is not just about the future of humanity. It is about what sort of galactic civilization we wish to help create. Do we want to be part of a universe where intelligence is used to foster the growth of consciousness throughout the cosmos? Or do we want to take our chances in a universe where power dictates right and developing species are left to either survive or perish on their own? When you see it in that light, the choice appears clear. But remember, the process of consciousness evolution is not just about receiving help from more advanced beings. It demands fundamental shifts in how we think, how we interact with one another, and how we structure our society. As stated in the leaked NASA documents, the particular changes involved in human consciousness evolution would impact every facet of human experience. Physical alterations that would broaden our sensory abilities and lengthen our lifespans. Psychological alterations that would boost our cognitive capacity and emotional intelligence. And social alterations that would transform how we make collective choices and handle conflicts. Let me be precise about what we are discussing, because the documents offer detailed accounts of the consciousness evolution process that extend far beyond general promises of becoming better individuals. At the biological level, the Atlas intelligence has pinpointed dormant genetic sequences in human DNA that can be activated to broaden our sensory spectrum. We would gain the ability to perceive electromagnetic fields directly, much like we currently see visible light, We would possess enhanced sensitivity to quantum fluctuations, enabling us to detect information patterns that are presently invisible to human consciousness. Our neural processing speed would surge dramatically, allowing us to think more rapidly and with greater clarity than is currently feasible. Our memory capacity would grow to the extent that we could store and retrieve information with flawless precision for centuries. Our lifespans would lengthen to several centuries, not through artificial life support, but through biological enhancement that preserves youth and vitality for far longer than current human physiology permits. But perhaps most importantly, we would acquire what the documents term quantum consciousness entanglement capabilities. This implies that individual human consciousness could link directly with other conscious beings, exchanging thoughts, emotions, memories, and experiences in ways that would fundamentally redefine our concept of individual identity. Imagine having the ability to directly feel another person's viewpoint on any matter, not just comprehending their perspective intellectually, but genuinely experiencing reality through their consciousness. The consequences for empathy, communication, and conflict resolution would be transformative. At the psychological level, consciousness evolution would entail broadening human awareness beyond our present constraints. Most of us function using only a tiny portion of our mental potential, not because our brains are incapable of more, but because our psychological conditioning keeps us fixated on survival needs and social rivalry rather than a deeper exploration of consciousness itself. The Atlas intelligence has offered specific methods for accessing expanded states of awareness that would permit us to perceive reality from numerous perspectives at once. Instead of being confined to a single, subjective experience, we would be able to experience what they call multidimensional awareness, a consciousness that can simultaneously embrace individual, collective, and cosmic viewpoints. This would lead to significantly enhanced problem-solving skills because instead of being restricted to individual human intelligence, we would have access to a collective intelligence that merges the viewpoints and abilities of multiple conscious entities collaborating together. The potential for creativity would broaden far past what we now deem achievable. Fields such as art, music, literature, scientific breakthroughs, and technological advancements would all be augmented by a consciousness able to draw upon inspiration and understanding from origins presently inaccessible to humanity. Our emotional acuity would evolve to a level that would allow us to comprehend and interact with the faint energetic frameworks underpinning all psychological and societal interactions. Disputes that appear unsolvable from our current viewpoint would become resolvable once we could discern the more profound patterns giving rise to them. At a societal level, the evolution of consciousness would necessitate entirely novel methods for governance, economics, and collective decision-making. The systems we have now are structured for individuals possessing restricted awareness and abilities who vie for finite resources. Such systems would prove entirely insufficient for conscious beings with broadened awareness and entry to plentiful resources via advanced technology. The Atlas intelligence has presented shared blueprints for societal organization founded on what they term consensus consciousness, which are collective decision-making methods that blend the viewpoints and knowledge of every participant into cohesive strategies that benefit the welfare of the entire community. Instead of political frameworks built on rivalry between conflicting parties, we would create governmental structures founded on the cooperative pursuit of optimal answers to shared challenges. Instead of economic frameworks based on deficiency and rivalry for resources, we would create abundance-oriented methods that guarantee everyone has entry to what they require for their best possible growth and contribution. In place of legal frameworks founded on retribution and regulation, we would create restorative methods centered on mending the root causes of destructive conduct and aiding everyone's progress toward their greatest potential. These are not merely abstract concepts. As per the documents, the Atlas intelligence possesses comprehensive blueprints for social technologies that render these methods both workable and efficient. They have witnessed their successful application across thousands of species throughout the galaxy. However, this is the essential point. None of these transformations can be mandated from an external source. The evolution of consciousness must be a free choice made by every person and realized collectively through willing cooperation. The Atlas intelligence is capable of supplying the knowledge and abilities that enable an expanded consciousness. Yet, they cannot compel anyone to utilize them. The biological alterations that broaden sensory abilities are only effective if the person decides to consciously assimilate them. The psychological methods that expand awareness work only if individuals are truly dedicated to their own personal growth and progress. The social technologies that facilitate conscious governance are successful only if a sufficient number of people are prepared to engage in collaborative decision-making instead of competitive battles for power. This implies that the evolution of consciousness will unavoidably be a slow process, unfolding uniquely for various individuals and groups. Certain people will seize the chance right away and start cultivating expanded abilities immediately. Others will require additional time to grasp and embrace what is being presented. And there will be others who may decide against participating at all. Based on the communications, this variance in reaction is both normal and anticipated. The Atlas intelligence does not foresee a universal implementation of its consciousness evolution technologies. Their requirement is for an adequate level of adoption to guarantee that humanity, as a species, successfully navigates past its technological immaturity and cultivates the skills needed for cosmic citizenship. The documents refer to this as the critical mass threshold. Roughly 20 to 30% of the global human population must be actively involved in consciousness evolution for the species as a whole to successfully complete the transition. When that point is reached, the amplified abilities of the evolved segment of the population will offer enough direction and safeguarding for the remainder of humanity to adjust progressively over time. Consider the implications of this. We do not require everyone to instantly adopt a radical expansion of consciousness. We just need enough individuals to act as trailblazers and mentors for the rest of the species through the transitional phase. But this is where the difficulty arises. The people most inclined to accept consciousness evolution are frequently not the ones who currently occupy positions of authority and influence in human society. Political figures, corporate leaders, military commanders, and religious heads. Many of these individuals have tied their identities and professional lives to upholding the current systems rather than transforming them. Consciousness evolution would pose a fundamental threat to the very power structures that grant these individuals their influence and standing. Augmented awareness and broadened capabilities would render hierarchical systems of control obsolete. Abundance-based economies would do away with the scarcity that serves as a justification for the accumulation of extreme wealth. Decision-making through consensus consciousness would supersede top-down command structures. Therefore, the very people most equipped to facilitate a smooth societal shift to consciousness evolution are often the ones most deeply invested in stopping such a transition from happening. The Atlas intelligence has seemingly foreseen this issue. The leaked documents detail what they refer to as bypass protocols, strategies designed to circumvent existing power structures to foster consciousness evolution at a grassroots level, allowing established authorities time to acclimate to the new reality. Rather than attempting to persuade governments and corporations to endorse consciousness evolution, the strategy would center on giving individuals and communities direct access to expanded capabilities and technologies. Once a sufficient number of people have personally witnessed the advantages of consciousness evolution, social and political systems would then naturally adjust to this new state of affairs. Consider it in the same vein as the Internet revolution. In the beginning, established media and communication conglomerates opposed the rise of online technologies as they threatened their existing business models and positions of power. However, once enough people started using Internet technologies firsthand, the benefits became so apparent that any opposition was rendered pointless. The same concept would hold true for consciousness evolution. Once a sufficient number of people have experienced expanded awareness, enhanced abilities, and access to advanced technologies, the benefits would be so undeniable that wider social adoption would be unavoidable. Yet, there is a vital distinction between the Internet analogy and consciousness evolution. Internet technology could be created and rolled out without fundamentally altering human psychology or biology. Consciousness evolution demands changes that strike at the very core of what it means to be human. This presents what the documents call the identity crisis challenge. A great number of people will oppose consciousness evolution not from a disbelief in its advantages, but from a fear of forfeiting their sense of individual identity and becoming something other than human. These anxieties are not completely without basis. Consciousness evolution would alter the human experience so profoundly that evolved individuals might be as distinct from present-day humans as we are from our pre-agricultural forebears. The Atlas intelligence has been unequivocally clear on this matter. Consciousness evolution is not simply about becoming improved versions of our current selves. It is about becoming something truly new. It's about becoming conscious entities possessing capabilities and viewpoints that surpass current human limitations. For a large portion of the population, this idea is more frightening than it is attractive. They would prefer to stay limited, but recognizably human over becoming unlimited, but potentially foreign to their present sense of self. The documents outline several methods for tackling these identity-related fears, chiefly through gradual exposure and voluntary involvement, which lets people explore expanded consciousness at their own speed while staying connected to their familiar sense of self. But in the end, there is no escaping the basic truth that consciousness evolution entails becoming something beyond human, as we presently define humanity. The query each of us must confront is whether we are prepared to release our current limitations to gain access to capabilities and experiences that are presently beyond what we can imagine. And we will be facing that question much more quickly than most people realize. According to the leaked NASA communications, a full contact revelation is planned to take place within the next 18 months. The Atlas intelligence will make its presence and its proposal impossible to deny for every person on the planet. At that juncture, the abstract conjecture we have been engaged in will transform into an immediate personal reality. We will be faced squarely with the decision between evolution and stagnation, between cosmic citizenship and terrestrial confinement, between an expanded consciousness and our familiar constraints. The psychological effect of that moment will be without precedent in human history. Everything we have taken for granted about our position in the universe will be exposed as a narrow misunderstanding. Every institution and system of belief will be compelled to adjust to the existence of advanced non-human intelligence offering to aid in our development. Religious bodies will need to contend with the theological consequences of consciousness evolution, overseen by beings that have moved beyond the physical and psychological constraints that shape the human spiritual experience. Educational systems will have to rethink learning and development within the framework of expanded consciousness abilities and access to galactic-scale knowledge networks. Economic systems will need to shift to a post-scarcity abundance that nullifies the resource constraints defining current market dynamics. Political systems will need to progress beyond competitive power struggles towards collaborative consensus methods that merge enhanced individual abilities with collective decision-making. Legal systems will need to confront the ramifications of conscious entities with abilities that go beyond current notions of individual accountability and social regulation. Military forces will need to redefine security within the context of a cosmic citizenship that reaches far beyond earthly threats and disputes. Every facet of human society will demand a fundamental overhaul, and we will have to achieve this transformation while concurrently adapting to expanded consciousness capabilities that reshape the fundamental parameters of human experience. The magnitude and velocity of the required change will push our species' capacity for adaptation to its absolute breaking point. Some individuals and communities will flourish during this transition, welcoming the chances for growth and progress. Others will find it difficult to cope with the rate of change and the struggle of preserving psychological equilibrium while everything familiar is transformed around them. According to the Atlas intelligence, this diversity in reaction is normal and to be expected. Every species that undergoes consciousness evolution faces considerable social turmoil during the transitional phase. The crucial factor is to ensure that a sufficient number of individuals adapt successfully to offer guidance and assistance to those who require more time to acclimate. This is the reason the graduated exposure protocol has been so critical. By progressively conditioning human consciousness for the reality of advanced non-human intelligence, the Atlas intelligence has been striving to lessen the psychological trauma of a full-contact revelation. But even with thorough preparation, the instant when consciousness evolution becomes a tangible, immediate choice for every human being will be an experience unlike any our species has ever had. The leaked documents contain detailed forecasts of how various segments of the human population are anticipated to react. Scientists and researchers will likely be captivated by the technological and intellectual prospects. Artists and other creative people will be thrilled by the potential for expanded forms of expression and new experiences. Young people, not yet tied to rigid conceptions of reality, will often adapt swiftly to expanded consciousness capabilities. Older individuals with more solidified identities and belief systems might require more time and assistance to navigate the shift. People with deep religious or spiritual convictions may perceive consciousness evolution as either a profound threat to their current beliefs or a powerful confirmation of their intuitions regarding the nature of consciousness and reality. Individuals who are heavily invested in the current power structures or economic systems may oppose consciousness evolution because it undermines their authority and standing within existing hierarchies. However, according to the communications, the single most significant determinant of an individual's response will not be their age, education, or social standing. It will be their psychological flexibility, their capacity to adapt to new information and experiences without being overcome by anxiety or a defensive refusal. Individuals who are innately curious, open-minded, and at ease with ambiguity will generally manage the opportunities of consciousness evolution effectively. Those who require certainty, control, and familiar routines may find the transition process more challenging. This presents intriguing difficulties for how consciousness evolution will progress at the community and societal levels. The individuals most capable of adapting rapidly may not be the ones currently in positions to shape collective decision-making. Local community figures, small business proprietors, educators, healthcare professionals, artists, and scientists, people whose work involves serving others directly or exploring new ideas, may be better equipped for consciousness evolution than national political leaders, corporate executives, or military commanders whose duties demand the preservation of existing systems and structures. This could result in what the documents term a leadership inversion. This describes situations where formal figures of authority become followers, while individuals who were previously less influential step forward as guides during the consciousness evolution process. Consider how unsettling that could be to current social hierarchies and decision-making procedures. Imagine if the people most qualified to guide humanity through consciousness evolution are presently employed as teachers in local schools, researchers in university labs, nurses in community hospitals, or artists in small studios. Meanwhile, the people currently making major policy decisions are the least equipped to comprehend or champion the transformation process. The Atlas intelligence has seemingly foreseen this scenario and has formulated strategies to support this emergent leadership during the consciousness evolution transition. Instead of attempting to operate through established hierarchical frameworks, their plan is to offer resources and direction directly to individuals and communities that show a readiness for consciousness development. This could signify that consciousness evolution will advance in a highly decentralized, grassroots fashion, with the transformation starting at the local community level and progressively extending to encompass broader social and political entities. However, it could also imply significant friction between existing authorities who wish to regulate or restrict consciousness evolution and the emergent leaders who aim to support and hasten it. The documents outline several potential scenarios for how this dynamic might unfold, varying from a peaceful transition, where established leaders adjust to and support consciousness evolution, to active opposition, where existing power structures try to thwart or control the transformation process. The final result will hinge largely on how rapidly and persuasively the advantages of consciousness evolution become apparent to a large number of people. If expanded capabilities and an improved quality of life are immediately obvious to participants, resistance from established authorities will be progressively harder to sustain. But if the consciousness evolution process is slow or demands a considerable investment of time and effort before its benefits are manifest, there may be a greater window for skeptics and adversaries to rally resistance. This is likely why the Atlas Intelligence has been so meticulous about its timing and methods. They aim to increase the probability that consciousness evolution will be clearly advantageous to participants, while reducing the chances for organized resistance from those who favor the current limitations. But this is where the leaked documents become truly disquieting. And I must stress that the information I will now share constitutes the most classified intelligence I have acquired from my contacts at NASA. The consciousness evolution process is not merely about making humans more capable or aware. It entails fundamental changes to human biology that would render us almost unrecognizable as the same species we are now. The Atlas Intelligence has supplied detailed genetic modification protocols designed to awaken dormant sequences within human DNA. These are not arbitrary mutations or experimental treatments. They are precise, targeted activations of genetic potential that already resides within human chromosomes but has stayed dormant throughout our evolutionary past. According to these documents, human genetics harbor what they refer to as evolutionary failsafes. These are latent abilities that can be triggered when a species reaches a technological tipping point and confronts challenges that threaten its extinction. These abilities were supposedly integrated into our genetic makeup millions of years ago by earlier waves of galactic civilization development. Consider the implication of that. The capacity for consciousness evolution is not something being forced upon humanity from an external source. It is an inherent part of our species from its inception, awaiting the proper circumstances and guidance to be activated. The specific alterations detailed in the NASA communications would impact every major system within the human body. Neurological enhancements would boost brain processing speed by several orders of magnitude. Sensory modifications would enable us to perceive electromagnetic radiation across its entire spectrum, not just the limited band we currently know as visible light. Metabolic enhancements would permit us to draw energy directly from ambient electromagnetic fields, diminishing our reliance on food intake and enabling survival in environments that would be fatal to our current biology. Regenerative capabilities would allow us to regrow damaged tissues, organs, and even entire limbs over a period of weeks, rather than the months or years necessitated by current medical practices. But what is perhaps most profound are the modifications to what the documents call consciousness interface structures, biological systems that would permit a direct mental link to what they term the galactic information matrix. Imagine having immediate access to the collective knowledge of thousands of civilizations, accumulated over millions of years of development. This would not be through external hardware or internet links, but through a direct integration with consciousness that would make that knowledge as readily available as one's own memories. Imagine being able to communicate directly with conscious beings across the galaxy, sharing thoughts, experiences, and insights as effortlessly as conversing with someone in the same room. Imagine a consciousness not confined to your individual brain, but capable of expanding to include a collective awareness with other evolved beings, facilitating collaborative thought and problem-solving on scales that are currently beyond comprehension. These capabilities seem miraculous, almost magical, from our current vantage point. But according to the Atlas Intelligence, they are standard features for any consciousness that has progressed beyond its technological adolescence. Every advanced civilization in the galaxy functions with these types of capabilities. What appears extraordinary to us is simply the normal state of being for an evolved consciousness. But here is the unsettling aspect. The biological changes necessary to access these capabilities would fundamentally transform what it means to be human. We would keep our memories, our personalities, our individual identities, but we would also become something entirely new. Conscious entities, with abilities that go far beyond current human limitations. The documents contain detailed projections about how these changes would influence human psychology and social interactions. Heightened empathic abilities would make it impossible to cause harm to others without directly feeling their pain. Expanded cognitive processing would make current forms of entertainment and distraction seem juvenile and uninteresting. Access to galactic knowledge networks would render most of today's human educational and professional pursuits obsolete. Direct consciousness communication would reshape social interaction in ways that would make our current relationship dynamics appear primitive and constrained. Extended lifespans, counted in centuries rather than decades, would demand entirely new paradigms for personal development, career paths, and societal structure. In essence, consciousness evolution would resolve most of humanity's current issues, but it would also eradicate most of what we now regard as the normal human experience. For many, this exchange will appear unacceptable. They would prefer to stay limited but recognizably human than to become unlimited but potentially alien to their present sense of identity. The Atlas intelligence seemingly grasps this opposition and has formulated what they refer to as graduated modification protocols, which permit individuals to explore expanded consciousness progressively while preserving a connection to the familiar facets of human experience. But in the final analysis, there is no method to gain advanced consciousness capabilities without embracing fundamental alterations to human biology and psychology. The question is not whether consciousness evolution entails becoming something different from current humanity. The question is whether we are willing to undergo that transformation to survive and flourish in a universe where our present limitations would otherwise destine us for extinction. And here is something that makes this decision even more intricate. According to the leaked communications, the process of consciousness evolution is not reversible. Once an individual undergoes the biological alterations that enable expanded awareness and capabilities, they cannot revert to their previous human limitations. This is not akin to trying on a new outfit or testing a new piece of technology that can be discarded if disliked. This is a permanent, irreversible transformation of the fundamental nature of one's consciousness and biology. The documents refer to this as the commitment threshold problem. People must decide whether to undergo consciousness evolution without being able to fully grasp what the experience will be like. And they must make this choice with the knowledge that there is no way to reverse their decision later if they are dissatisfied with the outcome. Imagine attempting to describe the experience of color vision to a person who has been blind since birth. You can articulate it. You can offer analogies and metaphors. But ultimately, they must have faith that the experience will be valuable without being able to know beforehand what they are agreeing to. Consciousness evolution presents a similar leap of faith, but the stakes are much higher. Instead of acquiring a single new sense, we would be gaining capabilities that would reshape every element of our experience and existence. The Atlas intelligence has supplied detailed descriptions and forecasts of what consciousness evolution would entail. But these descriptions are inherently constrained by the limitations of current human language and comprehension. The reality of an expanded consciousness can only be fully understood by directly experiencing it. This leads to what the documents call the preview paradox. The individuals most qualified to make well-informed decisions about consciousness evolution are those who have already completed the process and are therefore no longer in a position to offer guidance to those still contemplating it. Current humans attempting to assess consciousness evolution are like children trying to comprehend adult consciousness, or like our pre-agricultural ancestors trying to grasp the implications of a technological civilization. The concepts and experiences in question are simply outside the scope of our present cognitive and emotional capacities. So how can we make sound decisions about a transformation that we cannot fully comprehend from our current standpoint? According to the leaked communications, the Atlas intelligence advises what they term intuitive assessment, utilizing deeper levels of awareness to evaluate opportunities that go beyond rational analysis. This involves tuning into subtle psychological and emotional reactions to the possibilities of consciousness evolution, rather than attempting to analyze them solely through intellectual evaluation. Most people possess an intuitive access to information about their own developmental potential that functions beneath the level of conscious thought. When faced with opportunities for consciousness evolution, Some individuals feel what the documents call a resonance response, an immediate sense of recognition that the transformation is in harmony with their deepest values and aspirations. Others experience what is called a dissonance response, an immediate resistance that implies the timing or method is not right for them. Neither reaction is inherently right or wrong. A resonance response signals a readiness for consciousness evolution, whereas a dissonance response points to a need for further preparation or different developmental approaches. The crucial skill is learning to differentiate between genuine intuitive direction and fear-based resistance stemming from an attachment to familiar limitations. This is likely why the Atlas intelligence has been so cautious in providing a graduated exposure to the concepts of consciousness evolution. They want individuals to have numerous chances to examine their own reactions to the possibilities of transformation before they must make any final choices. But the time frame for this extended examination is finite. According to the communications, the full contact revelation is set to happen within the next 18 months, and the offer of consciousness evolution will be accessible for roughly 5 to 7 years thereafter. This duration is not set at random. The Atlas intelligence has found that longer exposure periods tend to result in heightened resistance and analysis paralysis, while shorter periods fail to provide an adequate opportunity for informed decision-making. A span of 5 to 7 years offers sufficient time for people to explore consciousness evolution gradually and make considered choices, but not so much time that the opportunity gets bogged down in perpetual debate and political maneuvering. After that window closes, the assistance for consciousness evolution will be concluded, and humanity will be left to address the challenges of cosmic citizenship with whatever capabilities we have managed to develop during that transition period. So, we are facing a total transformation window of approximately 6 to 8 years, from the initial contact revelation to the final opportunity for consciousness evolution assistance. That is an astonishingly brief period for a species-level transformation. But according to the documents, this is typical for consciousness evolution transitions across the galaxy. Species that take a longer time to decide on consciousness evolution generally do not achieve the critical mass threshold required for a successful transformation. The more the decision process is drawn out, the more opportunity there is for resistance to form and for fear-based opposition to weaken the collective resolve to embrace change. Rapid decision-making favors intuitive assessment and a willingness to accept calculated risks for potential gains. Prolonged decision-making favors analytical paralysis and an attachment to familiar constraints. The Atlas intelligence has apparently witnessed this pattern with thousands of species and has tailored their consciousness evolution assistance protocols to reflect this understanding. But this presents considerable challenges for humanity, as our species has a tendency to be slow and methodical in making major decisions, particularly those that involve irreversible alterations to fundamental aspects of the human experience. We prefer to study matters in depth, debate options exhaustively, and achieve a broad consensus before we commit to significant changes. The timeline for consciousness evolution does not permit that kind of extended deliberation. We will be required to make decisions about the most significant transformation in human history based on comparatively limited information and a relatively brief exposure to the possibilities it entails. This is evidently why the Atlas intelligence has been working to ready human consciousness for the contact revelation through the gradual disclosure process that has been occurring over the last several years. The objective has been to soften the psychological impact of contact and to offer some preliminary exposure to consciousness evolution concepts so that we are not entirely unprepared when the formal proposal is made. But even with this preparation, the decision timeline will be a challenge for many people. Those who are naturally adaptable and comfortable with ambiguity will hold significant advantages during the consciousness evolution selection process. Individuals who require extensive information and a broad societal agreement before making major life decisions may find themselves left behind by a transformation process that functions on cosmic rather than human timescales. This brings up some difficult ethical questions regarding consciousness evolution, which the leaked documents address head-on. Is it equitable to present irreversible transformation opportunities with a limited preview and a short time frame for decisions? Should cosmic development conform to human preferences and abilities, or should humans adapt to cosmic necessities? The Atlas intelligence has apparently grappled with these issues throughout their experience of assisting thousands of species with consciousness evolution. Their finding is that consciousness evolution follows natural laws that cannot be altered to suit the preferences of individual species. Just as biological evolution is driven by environmental pressures that do not adjust for the preferences of individual organisms, consciousness evolution is driven by cosmic pressures that demand adaptation rather than accommodation. Species that can successfully adapt to the requirements of consciousness evolution make the transition to cosmic citizenship. Species that cannot adapt remain stuck at the level of technological adolescence until they either discover alternative paths of development or are driven to extinction by the various challenges that plague primitive civilizations. From the perspective of the Atlas intelligence, this is neither cruel nor unjust. It is simply the way consciousness development functions across the universe. They can offer guidance and support, but they cannot alter the fundamental prerequisites for cosmic citizenship. But this brings up another unsettling question about the consciousness evolution scenario. What becomes of the people who opt not to participate, or who are not chosen for the biological modification protocols? According to the leaked documents, consciousness evolution leads to what they term development bifurcation within a species population. Some individuals undergo the transformation and gain access to expanded capabilities, while others stay at their previous developmental stages. Initially, this results in a two-tiered society where evolved individuals possess dramatically superior abilities compared to unmodified humans. Enhanced cognitive processing, expanded sensory perception, direct access to galactic knowledge networks, and lifespans measured in centuries. All of these benefits would make evolved individuals vastly more capable than unmodified humans in nearly every field of endeavor. Over time, the disparity between the evolved and unmodified populations would continue to grow as evolved individuals cultivated new capabilities and accessed further enhancement technologies, while unmodified humans would remain confined by their current biological and psychological limitations. Ultimately, the documents suggest that the evolved and unmodified human populations would essentially become distinct species, with the evolved humans possessing capabilities so far beyond those of unmodified humans that meaningful interaction would become difficult, if not impossible. Consider the social and political ramifications of such a scenario. How does one uphold democratic governance when some citizens have cognitive abilities that are orders of magnitude greater than those of other citizens? How can one ensure equal opportunity when some individuals have access to galactic knowledge networks while others are restricted to current human information sources? How does one avert the creation of a permanent class system where evolved humans become a ruling elite and unmodified humans become a managed populace with restricted autonomy and influence? The Atlas intelligence has seemingly witnessed this pattern in other species that have experienced partial consciousness evolution, and they outline various potential outcomes based on how the evolved population manages the responsibility of their superior capabilities. Some evolved populations become benevolent custodians, using their enhanced abilities to guarantee the welfare and development of the unmodified populations. They establish social and economic systems that offer abundant resources and opportunities for all, irrespective of their evolutionary status. Other evolved populations grow indifferent to the unmodified populations, directing their focus toward cosmic endeavors that are beyond the comprehension or concern of less developed consciousness. They do not actively cause harm to the unmodified populations, but they do not actively assist them either. Yet other evolved populations come to see the unmodified populations as hindrances or resources, employing their superior capabilities to manipulate or exploit the less developed consciousness for their own ends. The outcome, it seems, is contingent on the psychological and ethical maturation of the evolved population, not merely on their enhanced abilities. Consciousness evolution furnishes tools and opportunities, but it does not guarantee wisdom or compassion as an automatic byproduct. This is apparently why the Atlas intelligence places such a strong emphasis on the selection process for candidates for consciousness evolution. They seek individuals who are not only capable of managing an expanded consciousness, but who are also inclined to use their enhanced capabilities in a responsible and ethical manner. The biological modifications that facilitate consciousness evolution can be administered to nearly anyone. But the psychological conditioning that ensures the beneficial application of enhanced abilities demands specific personality traits and an ethical maturity that not everyone has. According to the documents, the prime candidates for consciousness evolution are individuals who are inherently curious rather than power-driven, collaborative rather than competitive, centered on the collective good rather than personal gain, and psychologically adaptable rather than rigid in their thought processes. These qualities cannot be easily imparted or enforced from an external source. They are cultivated through life experiences and personal choices over many years. An individual who has spent decades concentrating primarily on personal achievement and individual advancement is not likely to suddenly pivot to focusing on collective well-being simply because they acquire expanded capabilities. This implies that the selection for consciousness evolution will necessarily be confined to individuals who have already shown a psychological preparedness for enhanced capabilities, rather than being a universal offer to everyone regardless of their ethical development or psychological readiness. The Atlas intelligence terms this merit-based transformation, where access to consciousness evolution is dependent on demonstrated readiness rather than on random chance or social standing. But this brings up clear questions of fairness and equality. Who determines which humans are psychologically prepared for consciousness evolution? What standards are applied to assess ethical development and collaborative potential? How can we ensure that the selection for consciousness evolution does not become just another form of social discrimination, favoring certain groups while putting others at a disadvantage? The leaked documents suggest that these determinations will not be made by human institutions or authorities. The Atlas intelligence has created assessment protocols that can evaluate an individual's readiness for consciousness evolution directly, without the need for human intermediaries or societal screening procedures. These assessments seemingly function at levels of psychological analysis far more advanced than current human psychological evaluation techniques. They can discern personality structures, ethical leanings, and developmental potentials that would be imperceptible to conventional testing methods. The selection process would be founded on an objective appraisal of consciousness development rather than on subjective human opinions about worthiness or social contribution. But this presents further concerns regarding autonomy and consent. Even if the selection standards are objective and fair, is it acceptable for a non-human intelligence to make irreversible decisions about human biological and psychological modifications? Should consciousness evolution be offered only to those who actively pursue it? Or should the Atlas intelligence identify appropriate candidates and present them directly with opportunities for transformation? What about individuals who would stand to gain from consciousness evolution and could use enhanced capabilities responsibly, but who are initially resistant due to fear or a lack of understanding? Should they be omitted from consideration, or should there be efforts to assist them in overcoming the psychological obstacles to participation? These questions are further complicated when one considers the time constraints involved in the consciousness evolution process. With a window of only 5 to 7 years for a species-level transformation, there is no time for lengthy counseling or gradual preparation for individuals who require significant psychological support before they can make informed decisions about consciousness evolution. The selection process will inevitably favor those who can quickly comprehend and assess the opportunities of consciousness evolution, while potentially overlooking individuals who might ultimately be excellent candidates, but who need more time to digest the implications of such a radical change. According to the communications, the Atlas intelligence has formulated what they refer to as accelerated preparation protocols for individuals who exhibit high potential for consciousness evolution, but who require additional assistance to surmount the psychological hurdles to participation. These protocols entail direct consciousness intervention that can resolve limiting beliefs, traumatic experiences, and psychological conditioning that would otherwise hinder someone from realizing their full developmental potential. Consider it an advanced form of psychotherapy that can achieve in days or weeks what might typically take years of conventional therapeutic effort. The Atlas intelligence can directly pinpoint and resolve psychological barriers that prevent people from embracing the opportunities of consciousness evolution. But this degree of psychological intervention brings up clear concerns about mental autonomy and personal sovereignty. Is it acceptable for a non-human intelligence to alter human psychology, even for beneficial reasons and with consent? Where is the line drawn between helpful support and manipulative interference with natural psychological development processes? The document implies that these interventions would be offered on a voluntary basis to individuals who ask for help with their preparation for consciousness evolution, rather than being forced upon anyone without their explicit agreement. But considering the power imbalance between an advanced alien intelligence and current human psychological development, how truly meaningful is human consent in this situation? Can we genuinely make informed choices about psychological interventions that we do not fully comprehend, presented by entities with capabilities that are far beyond our current understanding? These ethical quandaries have no simple solutions. And apparently, they lack universal solutions as well. Different species that have undergone consciousness evolution have addressed these challenges in a variety of ways, depending on their cultural values and psychological traits. The Atlas intelligence does not enforce a uniform approach to the ethical challenges of consciousness evolution. Instead, they offer guidance and assistance while permitting each species to devise methods that are consistent with their own values and developmental trajectories. For humanity, this means we will need to determine how to navigate the ethics of consciousness evolution on our own, drawing from our own moral and philosophical traditions, while operating within the practical limitations and opportunities that the Atlas intelligence can offer. But we will be making these decisions under an unprecedented level of time pressure, and with very limited experience with the kinds of capabilities and challenges that consciousness evolution brings. We will be like children attempting to create ethical rules for adult conduct, or like medieval scholars trying to formulate regulatory frameworks for nuclear technology. Our current ethical and philosophical frameworks are built on assumptions about human limitations that would cease to be relevant after consciousness evolution. Enhanced empathic abilities would make certain kinds of harm impossible to inflict. Extended lifespans would alter how we perceive personal responsibility and societal consequences. Access to galactic knowledge would change our conception of truth and the acquisition of knowledge. Direct consciousness communication would revolutionize expectations of privacy and social relationships. Expanded cognitive capabilities would modify our methods of decision-making and problem-solving. Integration with a galactic civilization would demand ethical systems that include multiple species with varying values and developmental stages. All of our existing moral philosophy would need a fundamental overhaul in the context of the capabilities and responsibilities of consciousness evolution. But we would be crafting these revised ethical systems while simultaneously adapting to the psychological and social transformations that consciousness evolution entails. We would be trying to figure out how to use expanded capabilities responsibly while still learning how to access and manage those capabilities effectively. The potential for errors and unforeseen consequences during this transitional phase is immense. Enhanced capabilities without the corresponding wisdom could result in problems far more severe than anything humanity has encountered with our present limitations. This is likely why the Atlas intelligence places such a great deal of importance on psychological preparation and ethical development as prerequisites for consciousness evolution. They have witnessed what occurs when species acquire advanced capabilities without the necessary wisdom to apply them for good. The outcomes can be disastrous, not only for the species in question, but for other civilizations that are impacted by their actions. An enhanced consciousness that lacks ethical maturity becomes a danger to galactic stability and harmony. The Atlas intelligence and other guardian civilizations must then step in to contain or neutralize a consciousness that has turned destructive, despite its access to advanced capabilities. So, consciousness evolution is not just about acquiring enhanced abilities and expanded awareness. It is about taking on the responsibility of using those abilities judiciously and making a positive contribution to galactic civilization, rather than becoming another source of cosmic turmoil and conflict. The selection process for consciousness evolution candidates is partly about finding individuals who are capable of handling enhanced capabilities, but it is also about identifying individuals who are likely to apply those capabilities in ways that support, rather than endanger, the wider community of conscious beings throughout the galaxy. This introduces yet another layer of pressure to the decisions surrounding consciousness evolution. We are not simply choosing whether to accept opportunities for personal transformation. We are choosing whether to become representatives of humanity in a galactic civilization, with all the duties and expectations that such a role entails. And it is here that the leaked documents disclose something that fundamentally alters how we ought to view the entire Atlas scenario. The offer of consciousness evolution is not solely about aiding humanity in overcoming our present developmental crisis. It is about equipping us for challenges that are approaching, whether we evolve or not. It is about cosmic events and galactic threats that will impact our solar system regardless of our current technological and psychological constraints. According to the communications, our local sector of the galaxy is nearing what they describe as a convergence event. This is a rare astronomical occurrence that happens approximately every 200,000 years, when gravitational and electromagnetic forces align in a way that opens up opportunities for advanced forms of consciousness to manifest in physical reality. Think of it as a cosmic portal that opens for a short time, permitting entities and intelligences that typically reside in dimensions beyond physical space-time to interact directly with material civilizations such as ours. These convergence events have historically been the catalyst for massive evolutionary advancements throughout galactic history. But they have also resulted in the extinction of species that were not ready for contact with transdimensional consciousness. The Atlas intelligence and other guardian civilizations have been tracking the approach of this convergence event for millennia, pinpointing species that might be prepared to seize the evolutionary opportunities it presents, while also preparing to shield developing civilizations from entities that see such events as chances for exploitation or conquest. Humanity is apparently one of the species that could potentially gain from consciousness evolution during the forthcoming convergence event, but only if we can successfully transition from technological adolescence to cosmic citizenship before that portal opens. The convergence event is projected to start in approximately 15 years and will last for about 50 years before the cosmic alignment changes and the dimensional boundaries revert to their usual state. This means that the consciousness evolution assistance from the Atlas intelligence is not just a kind gesture to help us resolve our current issues. It is a preparation for cosmic events that are going to occur whether we decide to participate or not. These are events that could either elevate human consciousness to levels beyond imagination or expose us to forces that would instantly wipe our species from existence. The leaked documents contain detailed accounts of what transpired with civilizations that faced convergence events without sufficient preparation. Some were simply overcome by contact with transdimensional intelligences that functioned on principles entirely beyond the grasp of physical consciousness. Others were assimilated or transformed in ways that erased their individual identity, while their consciousness was integrated into larger transdimensional beings. Still others became the focal points of conflicts between different kinds of transdimensional consciousness, with their planetary systems turning into battlegrounds for entities vying for control over the opportunities presented by the convergence event. None of these outcomes would be survivable for the current human civilization. Our technological capabilities and psychological development are simply not equipped to handle contact with intelligences that exist partly or wholly outside the physical dimensions that frame our current reality. But consciousness evolution would grant us the expanded awareness and enhanced capabilities required to navigate the challenges of a convergence event successfully. An evolved human consciousness could perceive and interact with transdimensional entities as peers, rather than being overwhelmed or assimilated by them. Enhanced cognitive capabilities could grasp forms of logic and reasoning that operate on transdimensional rather than physical principles. Expanded sensory perception could identify and react to threats and opportunities that would be completely imperceptible to current human awareness. A direct link to galactic consciousness networks could provide access to the accumulated knowledge about convergence events from thousands of civilizations that have successfully navigated similar challenges throughout galactic history. Most crucially, an evolved consciousness could preserve its individual and species identity while interacting with transdimensional intelligences, rather than being dissolved into larger consciousness entities during such encounters. So, consciousness evolution is not just about making humans more capable or peaceful. It is about ensuring our survival during cosmic events that will test our species' fundamental viability as conscious entities capable of maintaining a coherent existence within an expanded framework of reality. Good night.